There are the odds for the number one overall pick in the draft. It had been Bryce Young. It flipped to C.J. Stroud after the Panthers made the move from number 9 to number 1. Actually, Stroud was third behind Young and Anthony Richardson before that trade happened. So Stroud still there at minus 350 as the favorite to be the first overall pick in the draft. Let's start with that first pick, the Panthers. Again, they made the trade up several weeks ago. There has been some smoke recently, and I saw something in Peter King's column yesterday, Football Morning in America, which you can see exclusively at ProFootballTalk.com, that maybe Bryce Young is creeping onto the radar screen for the Carolina Panthers. A lot of people in the organization like Bryce Young. It comes down to who the owner likes. And Peter and I have argued about this, and I respect his opinion on everything, but I think he grossly underestimates the power of the owner, and the owner doesn't have to mandate anything to anyone. Because I think at one point he said, well, the owner's never going to say you must do this. No, that's the point. That's the benefit of being the owner. You don't have to say that. The people who work for you know that they better listen. And you see David Tepper there at all these pro day workouts. David Tepper's on the road for all these visits. David Tepper's involved. At some point, his preference is going to come out of his mouth. In some way, it will manifest itself, what he likes and what he wants. And you could have a situation where you have some who want to go one way, some who want to go the other. Which camp is David Tepper in? That's going to be key before that final decision is made at number 1, Chris.
Yeah, no, it is. Of course, he's going to have a say in this for sure. Now, listen, there's definitely, your point's not wrong. The owner, if he really makes it clear that he's going to want that guy or whatever, yeah, they're going to lean that way. But there are plenty of stories of, hey, the owner comes in and says this, and it's like way far off from where the organization the front office wants to go, and they can talk the owner off the ledge a little bit too. No, I'm just giving both sides of the story there. It'll be interesting. We know Tepper.
You're right. I'm not. Right.
No, I know. So Tepper's very involved.
But you better be
and we
right.
Know he's thirsty.
If you talk. Let me say this. Yeah. If you talk the owner off the ledge,
that's right.
You better be right about the guy you took, because you're setting yourself up for years of I told you so if the owner ends up being right.
Yeah, right. You're right. Well, yeah, I told you so as he's firing you. I told you so. See you later.
Exactly.
The next guy's coming in. But yeah, this is going to be, I would think, again, this is C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young. They're the two safest picks for sure, the two most ready-to-go NFL pocket passing quarterbacks in this draft. They're ready, right? And then it just break it down into, what do you like, what don't you like? And then this is the Bryce Young. This is where the size thing comes into play a little bit. I mean, watching him, listen, he's got some plays and some releases and things where you just go, wow. I mean, his feet, his ability to make people miss is wow. But what I say sometimes too, Mike, and what I say to that a little is, some of those plays where I go, wow, I go, well, yeah, there's no defensive lineman within 7 yards of him. And now he gets to see the guy come at him after he's been sitting there for 4 or 5 seconds, and then he makes a move. There was a lot of plays where I go, I don't know if that's realistic in the NFL. I don't know if that's going to happen. That's kind of what, and then C.J. Stroud, on the other hand, is more the traditional guy that way and more of what I would think Frank Reich would want a quarterback. But again, Bryce Young's special. It's a not a great arm, but it's a good arm. But it's great in a lot of other areas as far as decision-making, feel, quick releases, different releases, having a feel for the game, all of that. That's where Bryce Young is very special.
And I don't know how at the end of the day you ever begin to make that final decision when you've got different factors.
Yeah.
The reality is the biggest unknown is what happens when this guy is playing in the NFL. The best example I can remember is Deshaun Watson coming out of Clemson in 2017.
Right.
There were concerns about his interceptions. And, the window is going to be even tighter at the next level. And if you're throwing a bunch of interceptions in college, it's going to be harder for you to thread the needle at the NFL level. But you know what? As the target shrunk, he got more accurate.
Yeah, he did.
The bigger the target,
right,
you got a little more play. Target smaller, you got to thread the needle. And he did. You don't know that until the guy gets there. You don't know how that guy moves in relation to other NFL talent, the way Patrick Mahomes can stay just a step ahead of the guys who are chasing him. You don't know that until you drop him into that level of competition and see what he does. Every level of football, you hear it all the time. Oh, it's so much faster. It's so much faster. And that's the truth of the NFL. It's faster, it's bigger, it's stronger than college. And you either meet the moment or you don't. And there's no way to simulate it. There's no way to predict it. You just have to throw him in there and see what happens.
Right.
And that's why the draft is ultimately a crapshoot. For all the time and the effort and the money that's spent, you just don't know.
Yeah.
And the chances are, one of these guys between Stroud and Young are going to figure it out, and the other one isn't. And somebody's going to get the guy who's the Peyton Manning, and somebody's going to get the guy who's the Ryan Leaf. There's a chance that's going to happen. Now, they both could be great. But there is a chance that one isn't going to be great, and there's a chance that both aren't going to be great. Just like Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold, number 1 and number 3 from 5 years ago.
Yeah.
We just won't know until we see them try to thrive and either succeed or fail at the NFL level.
No, you're right. It's a different game. It is. It's totally different. The NFL is defenses are more complex, like you talked about. The playing field's more even. You know, it's grown men who, there's no, like we talk about all the time. There's no, NCAA 20-hour rule. I don't kind of go to classes. It's football class all day long. Guys aren't out of position very often, right? So, that's where I lean back into C.J. Stroud because I go, I'm just going to trust, one, what I see and what my thought is projecting to the NFL in a close race like this. And I don't know if I could live myself with the smaller quarterback, especially if he got hurt, where I'm just going to go, oh my gosh, of course he got hurt. What was I thinking? That's going to be one of those too that could happen too. You draft him and he gets hurt and you go, well, of course he got hurt. He's 185 pounds and he's playing quarterback in the NFL. And that, another thing that bothered me about his film is quick and as awesome he is, but when he does get stuck in a spot where he's got to throw and then he gets hit as he's throwing, man, it's violent. I mean, he can fly through the air. He can get hit like you go, oh my gosh, that was a Mack truck and it wasn't even that aggressive of a shot. Those are the things that scare me a little bit about him. But man, he's a natural at the position. They both are. Stroud has to work on playing backyard football a little bit. But as far as throwing in the pocket and making big-time throws with people around him, Mike, he's as good as it gets in that department. But he needs that backyard element a little bit more like we talked about. Bryce Young, it's almost the exact vice versa, and it's going to just, Carolina is close. It's going to be nitpicky. I'm sure it's going to drive them crazy here a little bit the next few weeks.
I think that 185 is even more concerning than the 5'10 or whatever he weighs. We know it's not 204.
Right.
As his playing weight because he weighed in at the combine and didn't work out. And then when he did work out his pro day, he didn't weigh in. So he weighs something less than 200 pounds. And we look at, and again, this is where ownership becomes a factor. What are the current trends in the NFL? What are the things that become issues for teams? And it's Tua. Look at what the Dolphins went through last year with Tua's concussions. For an owner of a football operation, a multi-billion-dollar organization that saw what the Dolphins were dragged down by last year constantly, it was national news. Every time Tua had a concussion, it was a big deal. Do I want our team to be in the middle of that? Now, some owners do. Some owners like Jerry Jones view any publicity as good publicity. But some owners may not want that, and they may not want to have that risk. We're going to use this pick we traded up to get, and we're going to take the risk here of having a guy who could end up just like Tua. And, is that a fair comparison? It's two different players altogether, but those comparisons get made all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, it comes back to I told you so.
This guy's smaller.
It's like the OBJ risk.
Yeah.
Hey, the guy's had 2 torn ACLs. We sign him and he gets a torn ACL. We can't say we didn't know of the risk. And so this guy's small. Like you said, he's smaller than Tua, and that's just part of what you have to factor in. If it was a year ago, it's not an issue. This year, it's an issue, and I just think that's another factor that whoever takes him, and we assume he's going to go no lower than 2. We assume it's going to be Stroud, Young, or Young, Stroud.
Right.
But either way, that's part of the risk.
No, you're right. And, Mike, and that's another part of the conversation I wanted to hit on, too. On number 2, right? This is just food for thought, my knowledge, my thoughts, people I know in the NFL. But let's just say C.J. Stroud goes 1. We all take for granted that Bryce Young's going number 2 to Houston Texans. I guess so. I guess here's a part of me that I just want to throw caution to the wind a little bit. Like Nick Caserio, when I was working in New England and he was there, and you heard me ask Josh McDaniels this when we were at the Combine, right? I mean, quarterback like Bryce Young would not even be on the radar 10 years ago in New England. They would have gone, nope, he does not meet our measurable satisfactions in a bunch of areas. He's off the board for us. Now I know the game is adjusted. We know that. But as we've talked about, there's still a baseline of teams out there that are like, I would never do the small quarterback thing. I'm like that. If I was involved in a team, I just wouldn't. I would err on the bigger guy in that department. But I do wonder, and again, when you have a pick at number 12, you could do something else at 2, draft Jalen Carter, draft an edge pass rusher or whatever, and then at 12, maybe trade up and get somebody else too. I feel like that scenario has not been thrown out there, and it's just something I think about. And again, I don't know how much Nick Caserio's thoughts have changed in that department, but I know that I used to have a scouting sheet that used to have the checklist for each position, and the one that was for quarterback, Bryce Young wouldn't check off any of them. So that's where I do just wonder those possibilities. Just throwing it out there, Mike. I don't know that. I'm just throwing
You're talking about the Caserio scouting sheet.
Right. Yeah, from New England. I don't know what his specific scouting sheet is, but the one in New England, and he was the de facto GM at the time. He didn't have the exact, title there. That's what he had. I mean, that was part of the whole thing here. So, see, this is where he's awesome, Mike. You see there moving, makes a throw with awkward feet. It's all great there. It really is, But it's not going to be like a ton of pop on the ball. It's not going to be like, oh, wow, he powered that one in there in a tight window. He's a rhythm timing thrower, which is another thing, that a lot of people like, but I don't like as much. Rhythm and timing, yeah, you need it, but I'm a little bit more of a bullseye, get it in there type of thrower.
Let me make sure I understand what you're suggesting, though. You're suggesting the Texans could go with a different position at 2, swing back around later, and either address quarterback at 12 or move up into the top 10 if the guy they like is trickling through, and they could maybe be a Hendon Hooker, be a
Will Levis, exactly.
Someone other than the 3 that we assume we're going to go 1, 2, 3.
Right. I'm just throwing that out there. Again, it's just a thought, and again, it's a thought that's based on a little bit of history and knowledge of, again, who did Nick Caserio draft a few years ago? Davis Mills, pocket passing, big quarterback, right? That's really, they're from New England. It's Tom Brady. It's Phil Simms. It's Drew Bledsoe. It's Vinny Testaverde. It's that kind of guy that they've always looked at there. So that's just it has gone through my brain a little bit, just as far as thinking about that a little.
Let me offer you a curveball then.
Yeah.
Because this is fascinating. I mean, we're going to skip over number 3 for now. We've already talked about what could happen by way of trade, an Anthony Richardson move for someone to make outside of the top 10 possibly. What if? Because remember when Shane Steichen was introduced as the new coach of the Colts? Jim Irsay couldn't help himself. He blurted out how much he likes the Alabama quarterback.
Right.
Okay, so if your assessment as the Texans, as Nick Caserio, is Bryce Young is not the guy that you want to build a team around. We don't want to build a team around him. The Colts seem like they do, and we play him twice a year. And if we're right about Bryce Young, they're wrong about Bryce Young. And, we'd really rather not do a trade in our own division, but it's kind of like rolling a Trojan horse up to the gates. If you believe Bryce Young is not really going to be as good as number 2 in the draft would suggest.
Yeah.
And that this screws up the Colts and sets them back, and he's going to struggle, and he's not big enough. Would you do a 2-4 trade with the Colts if you could pick up their first-round pick next year, going down just 2 spots?
Yeah.
And still get, a pretty good player at number 4.
I think I would.
I hadn't thought of that until you said that.
Yeah.
But, man, that would be intriguing. That's the kind of stuff we need to happen. Hey, Chris Ballard. Hey, Nick Caserio, get on the phone and make that happen so we have something to talk about later this week. That would be something to talk about.
It's not a crazy scenario. It's not. And especially like we're talking about, the Texans don't really look as Bryce Young as their type of guy. They go, okay, hey, we'll go to number 4, and, one of the guys that's our type will be there. So, that would be interesting, certainly. And again, this is not knowledge or, I should say, like, I'm not hearing this or whatever, but just knowing people and, being around the league for as long as I have been, those are the things I'm thinking about right now as I, go through the draft process and got to get ready for my own damn mock drafts and all of that stuff. So, there's that scenario. And then, the caveat of number 3 of the Cardinals sitting there where we all think they want to go defense, but they're probably going to be open for business and going, hey, anybody want any of these quarterbacks? Come up here to number 3. We're open. And that's going to make, very interesting here, top 4 picks as well.
So if the Cardinals use the pick at number 3, if they don't trade it,
Yeah.
and they're going to be in a position where they basically have the first pick in the draft because they're not looking quarterback. They've got Kyler Murray. Where do you think they are looking if they use the pick and don't swap out of that spot?
I do think it's D for sure. Defense for sure. You look at them, and the number one thing that you'll look at that's just glaring about them is you go, they don't have a pass rusher. They don't have one guy that you go, hey, there's 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and the other team's dropping back to threat pass, and we're in a tight football game or whatever, or we're winning by 7. We need somebody to close the game out here. You know, that's where I would imagine they're thinking. You know, whether that's the Will Anderson from Alabama, whether it's the Tyree Wilson from Texas Tech, certainly. I know the DB that is my number one corner and a lot of people's number one corner, Devin Witherspoon. He's been thrown into that conversation at number 3. But I would expect more D-line, Mike. I would think it's one of those, and maybe even Jalen Carter. I think D-line in general is a need, for the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, they just have so many needs.
Yeah, they do.
I prefaced the question by saying if they make the pick. But, boy, I'd be tempted to trade out of that spot just to get more lottery tickets, get more players at a low cost, develop them, hope we can get some of these right with Monty Austinforth, the new GM.
Right.
And just get volume, and don't put all your eggs in one basket with that third pick in the draft. But it would be tempting because you basically have, as I said, the first pick. But you could get a lot more. And we always – look, teams at the top are always looking to trade down. The challenge is finding somebody who is willing to abandon the draft capital to move up. We've seen it this year with the Panthers. We've seen it from time to time in recent years. But it always seems like there's more teams, Chris, that want to move down than there are who want to move up.
It does.
Nobody ever wants to be criticized for not taking enough to move down.
Yeah, no, agreed. It does always seem that way. And then, Monty Austinforth being from New England and gosh, he was sitting in the room all those years where Belichick was the king of trading down too. And I would, to your point, again, I would think that would certainly be on the radar for a team like that. Like you said, there's a lot of holes there. And that's a human being in Monty that I know trusts his process to think he's going to find value in later picks. And so that certainly is on the radar, Mike. Arizona is one in there. You just go, anything can happen for them right there at that pick number 3. I don't know what to expect. But if they stay, I do think it'll be defense 100%, and I would expect it to be front 7 on defense for sure.
The Colts become fascinating if they see quarterback go 1, 2, 3, and they don't want to use the 4th overall pick on their 4th quarterback if their top 3 guys are gone. That's when the Lamar Jackson scenario comes into play. And in theory, although I think it would look, it's a stupid theory. Sometimes the theory makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. In theory, that would be the point where you trade with the Ravens and give them the 4th overall pick, but you still have to have Lamar Jackson under contract or it doesn't work. So that's not going to work. But my point is this, maybe that's where the Colts go in a different direction and then make a run at Lamar Jackson after the draft. If they see their top 3 quarterbacks go, they don't think their 4th guy merits that spot. The other thing to do is they could trade down and take their 4th quarterback later. They could run that game and take that risk that guy won't be there. 4 is too high for this guy. We can move down. Somebody can come up and get the first non-quarterback in the draft, and we can get Will Levis, Hendon Hooker, whoever, later in the round. There's risk there, but we've seen teams do that. Sometimes it pays off. When it doesn't, you don't find out about it. That's something the Colts could do.
Yeah, definitely. And then the Colts are interesting in the Shane Steichen fact, too, of, what are they looking for? Are they looking for Justin Herbert and like a Will Levis type of guy, right? Like where big, throw bombs down the field and do all that, where Shane Steichen had that with the Chargers? Or are they looking for a Jalen Hurtsy type of guy, right? Is their eye on Richardson? And if he is gone, then the scenario opens up like you talk about. But then you trade down, right? And there's no guy like Richardson left. But Hendon Hooker, again, we've talked about he can move, he can play. Levis is athletic. I think he's raw. He's got some stuff to work on. And then the other guy I'm going to throw out there just for late first round, early second round thoughts that I think deserves to be is Dorian Thompson-Robinson. It's another guy that I think is, he's the quiet guy that I could see teams going, oh, we'll wait till the second round, early second round to maybe get him or whatever. But yeah, they have some options there, but they're definitely in an interesting spot, like you said. If it goes 1, 2, 3 quarterback, and the quarterback they wanted is off the board, what the hell do they do?
The Seahawks at 5 have been trying to sell the idea that they're in on the quarterback conversation. They signed Geno Smith to a new deal, but when you look at it, they could get out of it after only 1 year if they wanted to. I just don't think, as you and I have agreed in the past, they've exited a reality where it was all about the quarterback. Yeah. The last thing they want to do is undermine Geno Smith with a guy that if you take him at 5, you can't avoid the conversation.
Exactly.
When is he going to play? When is he going to be ready? It's all about him. It's all about him. It's all about him. They've had enough of that. I'll be stunned if they take a quarterback at 5, in part because all the best ones may be gone by then, the best of the best. Maybe at 20, they would take one. But even then, I don't think that's where the Seahawks should be right now. I think they're putting that out there just to send a message to the Falcons at 8, the Raiders at 7, or anyone else who may be thinking quarterback not in the top 10.
Yeah.
Here's a spot where you can come get your quarterback, and especially for the teams at 7 and 8. Don't trade up to 6 with the Lions. Don't be calling them. You should be calling us because we may take a quarterback here and take that guy that you would pick. I think that's what that's all been about.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you there. I don't. Again, I think another team where, you look at 3, 4, and 5 where I go, those are 3 GMs that I don't think would be mad about taking more picks if somebody came up and, was open for business that way. But the Seahawks, if they do sit there at 5, yeah, I don't expect it to be quarterback. You explained it right. We had this conversation last week. You said it right. They don't want to deal with, the quarterback's the king again, and we got to deal with all that crap. They're going to build a team, and Geno was awesome last year, so why abandon that ship? So now you look at them, and I think they're another team, Mike, like we talked with Arizona, that I expect defense to be, the guy on the card here when it's all said and done, whether it's who's ever left over. That's why I said Jalen Carter before. I mean, he certainly could be a guy that is on their radar and makes sense, especially for their defensive scheme they play now. They're not playing the Seattle scheme. Or who's ever left over from the pass rushers. If the Cardinals took Will Anderson from Alabama, well, maybe this is where the Texas Tech kid comes involved here. So, but I would think it's there. They're a team that we've talked about a lot over the last year or two to go, who makes a play for them on the defensive line in big moments? Who is ever going to be that guy? And they don't really have that guy. They got Draymond Jones in free agency, right? Draymond Jones. Draymond Jones. But, they need more there in that department.
The ceiling and the floor are the 2 key factors for a draft pick, and the floor for Jalen Carter presumably is 10.
Yeah.
Where is his ceiling? Is 5 where the window opens on Jalen Carter? Do you see him going before 5?
I think 3 could be a possibility. I do. I don't look at anything in Arizona for them to sit there and, for me to sit there and go, well, yeah, they're good there. And guess who they got a Jonathan Gannon who just coached the defense with the biggest set of asses in the history of football. They all got, gigantic legs and ass. So I would think he'd be all for. He just drafted Jordan Davis last year and went, man, look at that big ass and how awesome that is. Whoa, Jalen Carter looks like that. Let me think about him too. So I think that's not a crazy possibility at all.
Yeah, when Chris says biggest set of asses, he does not mean collection of undesirable personalities. He literally means the largest butts in football, and that's what it's about if you're going to try, especially if teams are going to be doing the quarterback push play. It's now incumbent on having even bigger legs and butts on your interior defensive linemen so you can push back on.
Well, he's got to deal with the 49ers. He's got to deal with the Seahawks and Kenneth Walker, and Pete Carroll's going to run the ball and all that. I would think, and again, he's a defensive coach. You'd think he'd want to get his defense to look good, right off the bat. Hey, this is why you hired me. I've changed this part around, and we're one of the top defenses in football. That's where I do think about that too. It's the politics and the posturing of making the new head coach look good too that the head coach wants that I think could go into that conversation as well.
Next up at 6 are the Lions with the Rams pick. This is the last of the Matthew Stafford, Jared Goff, hot potato trade. The 6th pick because the Rams were so bad last year. They also had the 18th pick. Fascinating spot.
Yes.
I think I don't. Again, we love talking about quarterbacks, and we don't know how long Jared Goff's going to be the guy. But 6, I think, is too low for them to get a top flight guy. They can go a lot of different directions. This feels like a luxury pick for them. Number 1, it's an extra selection, and number 2, where is the most glaring need that you absolutely have to use that 6th pick to fill? They could almost trade down.
No,
if they wanted to out of that 6th spot.
They could. They're they did a good job in free agency. This is the O-line's good, but D-line again. Here's another one where you can get into that conversation again. Hey, pass rushers, you can never have enough of them to go with Aiden Hutchinson or whatever, or if a Jalen Carter's on the board there. But we also know their secondary sucked last year. Sorry for the language. Sorry, England. All right. But
that's nothing compared
okay,
to
good.
We said.
All right. But yeah, they were horrible. That's why they went out and signed Cameron Sutton, right? They signed Emmanuel Mosey. They signed Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. If it weren't for them, I'd go, this might be prime spot for my man crush, Devin Witherspoon from Illinois, my kamikaze corner who can play on an island and bite kneecaps off and do all of that. I could see that being the case, but I do feel like it's D-line or cornerback, Mike. I don't know if they'd go tight end. I don't think so. There is one tight end that's probably worthy of that pick and the kid from Utah, but that would be my assessment so far, Mike. And I'm not done with the draft process yet, as you know, but I'm working my way through it here.
Devin Witherspoon is fascinating there too because when you think of the fact that you got to deal with Justin Jefferson twice per year,
right?
And we saw how physical the Giants got with him in the postseason game, and I don't know that it matters. I don't know that it phases him, but they were able to neutralize him by having 3 bodies on him. Maybe if you have one guy who's rough and tumble who can just and again, you're not going to stop him from catching passes, but if you apply clean legal contact to him in the process, then maybe that gives you an edge.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Some guys you just can't cover. But we were talking about it yesterday. The guy, was it him we were talking about 50-50 balls being 90-10 with anyone else, or was it another one of them? I can't remember. But the point is, you got to ultimately tackle the guy if he has the football, and Devin Witherspoon has proven to be a guy who's able to make those tackles, and he does fit with the Dan Campbell mindset. That's the other thing, too.
Right.
You've got Chris Spielman there. You've got Dan Campbell. They're going to be drawn to guys who would play the game the way they did, and Witherspoon falls into that category.
Yes, he definitely does. Mike, it's really it's one of those where you don't need to go into deep study here, but at some point, maybe while you're eating your breakfast after the show, just go watch highlights of Devin Witherspoon. Go, you don't need to dive deep in. You're gonna see 5 or 6 plays and go, holy crap, is that real? Did he really throw his body around like that? Can he really run like that? Is he that twitchy and accelerate? It's a fun watch. It's why he's my new man crush in the world. And like you said, there is a personality vibe there that makes a lot of sense to where you could connect dots and go, yeah, he fits into that culture for sure. He's ready to fight at an instant anytime you want him. But I would think that, defense would be still the main thing. It was a top 5 offense, right? The defense was the issue all year, and I would think that's where they address if they stay at number 6.
The Raiders have made no bones at number 7 about their interest in quarterbacks, but they also are doing their best to temper expectations. This is not a quick fix. And when you're in the AFC West and you're quite possibly I don't know who the 4th team is right now, but they've got Sean Payton in Denver, and I think the Broncos are going to be better than they were last year, and their final record wasn't horrible. It wasn't as horrible as the vibe. It was just far less than it was expected to be. You got the Chiefs, you got the Chargers. They really are, I think, trying to build. And I think that's conducive to a trade down because, again, more picks, more lottery tickets, more players who become the nucleus of your team going forward. But I have no idea what the Raiders are going to do because I just don't think, unless they trade up, and they're a team that's been mentioned as a possible trade up to number 3, unless they trade up, I don't know who's going to be there that provides them with that immediate boost they need.
No, I hear you there. They have a lot of options. And again, there are another team, yeah, just knowing that New Englandish vibe that I would think, yeah, players trust in their process and their scouting department and how they, build their list, that they're going to find value as far as their more picks they go. But they could go the quarterback thing, like you said, I think is still on the board. How do they feel about Jimmy Garoppolo? Do they think it's really a long-term thing? Do they want to pull the trigger and kind of develop a guy and have him sit a year behind Garoppolo? I don't think it's a crazy thought with the Raiders. I don't. So I could see Josh McDaniels doing that. And then you get into, they're another team you can look at and go, hey, corner's a real issue there. Whether it's a Devon Witherspoon, maybe Christian Gonzalez from Oregon, right, is another guy that's kind of viewed in that territory as a top 15 type talent in the NFL draft. That makes sense. O-line, I never put them out of the conversation for that too. So they have a lot of ways they can go. They're a hard team to get a feel for here. They got a few holes. They got the quarterback thing, and a few positions, especially on defense, that you look at to go, they need to upgrade there. So they're another team. I don't know what to expect, and I'm sure is looking for a trade down partner.
Falcons at number 8. They're quietly putting together a team that could contend in a bad division, the NFC South. They've been 7-10 the last 2 years. We have a different view of them, like they're not as good as they've been. They're better than they've been, and they have a chance to be even better than that. Linked to quarterbacks, even though they claim they're all in with Desmond Ridder, that may be the smokescreen. What do you think they do when they're on the clock? And again, what happens with the first 7 is going to complicate everything. The deeper you get in the top 10, the harder it is because you have to see how it plays out ahead of you. But where do you think they should be looking when they're finally on the clock, assuming they stay put?
Like we kind of talked about with the Seahawks and the Cardinals a little, like the first thing I think of is just like, who's a marquee player in their front 7? I mean, we know Grady Jarrett's there, but they don't really have the pass rusher that we talked about, a guy that can come off the edge in big moments or whatever and close a game out or do that. So that's where, you get into a Tyree Wilson, the kid from Texas Tech, as far as a pass rusher there. I would think something along those lines. You got Grady Jarrett. They signed David Onyemata, right, from the New Orleans Saints in free agency. They do have some big people there. I feel like that has got to be the position to look at more than any others. Secondary, sure, there's not a safety there. The corner thing can come up a little bit. But I feel like it's another team here where I look at a defense to be probably the position of the way to go here. I don't think there's a receiver that you take here yet. They took Drake London in the top 10 last year. They got Kyle Pitts. Their O-line is very good to begin with. So I really expect it to be defense for Atlanta, Mike.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. That's where they need to beef up the team. Quietly, the offense is improving. Defensively, it's been an issue. We've seen it falling apart gradually in recent years. Key piece is gone, and no one obviously replacing. Number 9, the Bears. They've got 2 first-round picks. They moved down, obviously, out of number 1. Last year it was tear it down. This year it's build it up. They're doing what they can to support Justin Fields. Where do you think they go when they're finally on the clock at number 9?
O-line seems to be the thing to think of, right, Mike? Again, I haven't gotten through, like, edge. I just started the pass rushers, so I'm just getting there with getting through all that. O-line, I haven't got there. But I know enough about the top guys to know they're the top guys, right? There's the kid from Northwestern that I can never say is Peter Skoronski, right? He's certainly Paris Johnson, the tackle from Ohio State. Those are 2 areas you certainly could look at to go, they can improve there for sure and help out their football team and help out Justin Fields and help out that style of football that we think they're going to play this year.
Well, that's right. Look, if you're going to convert Justin Fields into a pocket passer, you need to have enough time to form a pocket so he will hang in there long enough to throw the ball instead of rely upon that incredible running ability that he has. So if he's not abandoning, then he's staying.
Right.
If you have better blockers, it's simple sometimes.
Right. Well,
you have better blockers, there's a better chance he's going to stay put and not try to take off and run for 50 yards. And again, not extend his career by becoming the pocket passer he needs to be at times in order to be the most effective quarterback he can be. So I tend to agree with you there. And hey, that's the first time we've mentioned an offensive line.
Right.
So if their needs are offensive line, they may have the pick of the bunch even at number 9. Last one, number 10. The Eagles are there. They have number 10, and they have number 30 in round 1. Hey.
Playing with house money here, Mike. I mean, damn. The best team in football has got the 10th pick of the draft. Like, holy crap, Batman.
But they've lost some guys.
They have, yeah.
But they've lost some guys.
Right.
So they have needs now. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson gone. Javon Hargrave gone. I mean, the thing we talked about earlier with Jalen Carter refusing to meet with any teams out of the top 10 may be the product of a very simple message from Howie Roseman, the GM of the team, to Drew Rosenhaus. If Jalen Carter is there at 10, we are running the card to the podium with his name on it.
I wouldn't be shocked if that was said. I wouldn't at all. Lost Javon Hargrave in free agency. Start a new thing here. Yeah, we just got to the Super Bowl with Hargrave and Fletcher Cox, right? Now we're going to try to go to Super Bowls with Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter. That's what we're going to do, the two Georgia guys in the middle. I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, they could do that. You know, I don't think the DB thing's coming into play here. They kept Darius Slay and all that. But here's the Jalen Carter, a pass rusher, you know, whether, again, it's the Texas Tech kid, the Iowa kid, you know, that we met, Van Ness, right, who looks like Hercules. You know, the Iowa State kid, Will McDonald. I could see them going pass rusher, too. Brandon Graham getting up there. Here's the other one I'm going to throw out, though, Mike. Bijan Robinson. I think this is where this could be a screw you. We'll take the best running back in the draft. And what we look at is to be definitely one of the top 10, 15 players in the draft. And, yeah, it's running back. But, damn, we got an O-line, Jalen Hurts, those two receivers, that tight end. And now we have – arguably, I mean, he's going to be one of those guys, Bijan Robinson from Texas, where as soon as he's in the NFL, he's going to be in the top 5 running back conversation. He's that special. So that's one where I'll throw it out there just right off the bat and go, that could happen there.
Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.